When attempting to understand the Bible, we can often find ourselves in a position similar to someone doing a jigsaw puzzle. When doing a jigsaw puzzle, if you're anything like me, you probably begin by turning over all of the pieces to see the images upon their face. Then you start to gather the edge pieces, and especially the corner pieces. The corner pieces and the edge pieces will give you a sense of the shape of the puzzle and help you to put in further pieces. Then you gather pieces together according to their colours. All the cloud pieces and the sky pieces go in one pile. Maybe there's a part of the puzzle in shadow, and so you gather the darker pieces belonging to that part and put them in another pile. You pay attention to the shape of the pieces and also to the image upon them. And when we're reading the Bible, we're doing something very similar. We pay attention not just to the images upon the pieces, but also to the way in which their shape helps us to understand their connection with other pieces. We see the affinities between pieces. So, for instance, when we're reading the story of the tabernacle, we may notice some surprising connections, and those connections will help us to put the puzzle together, to make sense of what the story means. Now, one of the most surprising connections that we find in the story of the tabernacle is with the story of the flood. Reading the story of the flood, there is a description of 2 sets of 7 days of preparation, followed by 40 days. And there's something very similar in chapter 24 of Exodus. There is the 40 days of the rising of the water in the flood, and there's the 40 days in which Moses ascends on the mountain. In both cases, there's ascension. In both cases also, we have sets of divine instructions for covered wooden boxes, with the dimensions explicitly given. One of the boxes is overlain with inglorious material, and one is overlain with glorious material, with gold. Moses can be seen as a new Noah. Moses leads his flock through the waters of the Red Sea to the mountain. He mediates a new covenant as he ascends on the mountain. In the story of the Exodus, there is another similarity to the story of the flood. There is a great sin, a more general sin of the people, that leads to the Lord saying that he will wipe them out and suggesting starting anew with Moses alone. Moses finds himself in a Noah-like position, and Moses intercedes for the people in a way that enables them to be saved. He identifies with the people and will not let them go. He will not disassociate with them so that the Lord can destroy them and leave him alone. The story of the Exodus ends on the first day of a new year, something that corresponds to the landing of the ark in the story of Genesis. How do we make sense of the connections? When we see these 2 stories and we recognize the similarities, as we see the different shapes of the puzzle pieces and how closely they resemble at this point, how are we to make sense of it? We can see Moses as an intercessor who saves the people from judgment. We can also see Moses as one who leads his people and forms the covenant. A further thing that helps us to make sense of it is when we recognize that the tabernacle is a realm for the holy presence of a jealous God in a world flooded with sin. If Noah's Ark was a realm that protected sinful humanity in a world flooded by God's judgment, the tabernacle is in many ways the inverse, and especially the Ark of the Covenant is a place for the holy presence of God in a world that is swamped with evil. God is going to be present with his people. The seed of a new creation is now afloat upon the flood of sin, and God is going to come to rest upon a new mountain, and from that mountain a new world is going to be formed. Recognizing the connections with the story of the flood, we can see something more of the significance of the tabernacle. The tabernacle is not just one isolated tent. It has a cosmic significance. It's the seed of a new creation, just as the ark was the seed of a new creation. It was the little microcosm in which a new world was protected from the judgment of God. And in the case of the Ark of the Covenant and the Tabernacle, it's God's holy presence protected from breaking out against the sin of humanity. The hope being that in days to come, God's presence would transform the world, that the glory of the Lord will flood the earth as the waters cover the sea, that this flowing out of God's glory would not lead to the destruction of man, but would lead to the transformation of the world and man into the image of a holy God.